WG Rival here with the final part of my 100 subs contest. So there's 22 of you asked me questions, thank you very much for that. So this could be quite a long one, so grab yourself a cup of tea and we'll begin. First to ask a question was Jason. Number 1, is this a question? Yes, Jer, it's a question. 2, where do you find the time? This one threw me a bit because I didn't think I was that productive. I maybe am rattling through them at the moment, but I think I'm doing basic models with admittedly quite basic paint jobs. So especially the Dark Age figures, they're quite simple, not overburdened with detail, which I don't mean as an insult. I think it's the correct amount of detail for Dark Age Welshman is just to have a frock and possibly some shoes and a little pouch on his belt, and that's about it. They're basic figures. I'm doing fairly basic paint jobs. I'm cutting corners. Like if I make mistakes, like forget to paint some of the mail, I've done that on a few. I've forgotten to paint the mail silver. By the time I've got around to black washing it, it's like bollocks. I'll just black wash the grey primer and dry brush it silver afterwards. So I'm cutting a few corners, just stuff I can get away with, I think. But yeah, cutting corners, simple figures, very basic paint jobs. That's how I find the time. Jedi Jim asks, which appeals to you more, painting sci-fi, fantasy or historicals? And if you limit the entries to the UK due to shipping costs abroad, that's no problem. To answer your last one first, that's absolutely fine. I'll ship a competition prize to wherever. I think there's a choice of UK, USA and Australia. There's possibly somebody else where, I don't know, but wherever you are, mate, if you're the winner, I'll paint you some and send it to you. To answer your first question, I think historicals appeal to me slightly more. I like them both. I like painting sci-fi fantasy stuff because it is more spectacular, it's more detailed, there's more little bits to paint. The poses are generally more OTT. It's good fun, but I do like that with historicals you paint the period rather than the rule set, so there's not these proprietary things. So yeah, for example, I'm painting a bolt action army, and I keep calling it a bolt action army, but it's not really a bolt action army, it's a World War II army that I can then use with chain of command or whatever other rule set you care to throw at it. Those figures are valid. I like that with the historicals. You get a lot more bang for your buck. If I paint say a Cador Winter Guard, I've painted 16 figures there that's useful for War Machine only. I couldn't imagine using them in any other game. I could maybe shoehorn them into in Her Majesty's Name or something. I don't really know, but generally you paint that and you get a single game out of it. So historicals, more bang for your buck, but sci-fi fantasy, more interesting individual figures, more fun. It's a close thing, but historicals win. Uncta asks, how did you get started in the wargaming/miniatures hobby? And Heresy Productions asks, what were the first scale miniatures you have painted? I'll answer these two together because they are quite simple. I got started making model kits. Now, nothing to the standard that you'll see from Cohen C, from Greg, from all you scale model people on YouTube. I think what you do is amazing. This was a 6-year-old with a tube of glue and hoping not to frost up the canopy on his Spitfire and that sort of thing. But I did a hell of a lot of those. I had a ceiling plastered with especially World War II aircraft, lots of Messerschmitts, but a load of stuff. I went to secondary school, aged 11, and started role playing. So D&D, Judge Dredd, Paranoia, all those sorts of things, and that started me buying figures. But I buy quite eclectic figures. It's just whatever it was, whatever I fancied that week, or whatever I was doing for a role playing thing. I did a hell of a lot of the Citadel original Lord of the Rings range. I was Tolkien mad when I was a child, and I painted a hell of a lot of those. and it was in enamels, and they were pretty nasty paint jobs until I got better at it. I just kept doing it, but I didn't really play a sort of a combat game. I was very much a role player. I didn't really sort of play a tabletop combat game until Car Wars. Car Wars was a Steve Jackson Games thing. It was little card counters with cars on them, in dystopian future where cars shot the crap out of each other. There's a few games like this, a bit of a sort of Mad Max thing. Loved Car Wars, played a lot of that, played a lot of Blood Bowl, the original one with the cardboard figures. Then I think the first miniatures game where I started to play a lot, I collected a hell of a lot of 40k. I had the rule book and like the Realms of Chaos books and all that sort of stuff. Dozens of those old beaky marines and plastic space orcs and all that sort of stuff. Loads and loads of stuff. Never really played a game. But the first big game I got into was Epic. That's the first game I was playing a lot. So me and my mate back up north, we were playing a tremendous amount of Epic. Also a lot of Space Hulk. But Epic we really got into to an outrageous degree. Massive, massive armies. And again, Blood Bowl was always there. So once the Blood Bowl, later versions of it with miniatures involved, they were a lot of those. I just posted one up on Thursday of my final Blood Bowl team. They were kind of cool. I was going to do a dwarf one as well in blue and white, but never quite got round to it. The dwarfs aren't the easiest figures to paint. So the first figures I painted really lost to the mists of time, but it would have been like adventurers and like little individual blisters of orcs and goblins and kobolds and kobolds from D&D, that sort of thing. The first big collection, Middle Earth. First miniatures game I really got into playing, Epic. There you go, I hope the answer's in there in some of that ramble. Okay, Cruro Angelicis. Sorry mate, I butchered your name there, I know, but I think that's a better stab than a lot of people do. Anyway, he asks, what game systems do you fancy collecting / playing that you have nothing of at the moment? The silly answer is all of them, because there's so many good games out at the moment and they all look super cool. But to get it down to manageable, two. Firstly, Drop Zone Commander, because I've got the collector's model, but I've got none of the 10mm stuff that you actually play with. But the stuff that's coming out for that, like the foreground buildings and just the attention to detail that you get from Hawk War games, I think it's superb. I love the story as well. The story is fantastic. That's one. I'd love to get into PHR because I think they look really cool, but I may not enjoy fighting with them. The Resistance also looks amazing. UCM looks great, but everybody seems to be having UCM, so maybe avoid those. Love to get some Drop Zone. The other one is Malifaux. Again, the figures look amazing. The figures look brilliant, and this has the bonus that I've got mates that play Malifaux as well. So that's a very likely one, but it's going to take a bit of time before I've got free time to paint stuff up, because you see me going hell for leather on the Welsh. And I'll be doing the same for the Wars of the Roses stuff in future. There's never any room on the painting table, but yeah, Malifaux definitely will do. Drop Zone I'd like to. Whether that happens or not, we don't know, but those are the big two. I've got Kickstarters on the way for Infamy, which is a very low figure count, very, very cool looking figures, and the other one is a larger one, is Carnivale. So I suppose technically they're another one, because I've got nothing at the moment, but I've got a load of stuff on the way, so maybe that's cheating a little. Great question, thank you. Jason Brown asks, what's the worst wargame / wargamer you've ever played? That's quite naughty, but a good question nonetheless. I've been lucky that I think since leaving school I haven't actually played with an arsehole at all. I've played in tournaments, but only ever Dreadball tournaments, and the Mantic tournaments just tend to be extremely easy going. Nobody's taking it that seriously. People are playing to win, but nobody's being an arse. And I won. I played in Curious, the man who was a referee, and I suppose just running the tournament. You know, he sort of remarked at the end that there was 48 games, they all finished on time and there wasn't a single argument. It's that sort of environment I play in competitively, and non-competitively I'm playing amongst my mates, you know, my dreadball league that I play here. You know, people do have are concerned about, is it fun for both players, that sort of thing. So I'm very lucky with that. Now, to avoid this being a complete cop-out, I will say that there's some absolute arseholes I used to play with at school, you know, role-playing games, people who just out to win at all costs, get the stuff, get the XP, level up, all that. You know, when you're playing something like Paranoia, you know, which is it's a laugh, it's a game absolutely played for laughs, and somebody's treating it like D&D, somebody's treating it like we've got to win, we've got to get the stuff, we've got to level up, we've got to blah 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 blah, and it's just like, oh mate, just calm down, man, it's just a role-playing game, have a laugh. So naming no names, but one or two dickheads at school. But since then, honestly, I've been lucky. Not a cop-out, genuine truth. I'm a lucky guy, I've got good mates to play with. Cheers Jason, great question. Scorpius GLC asks, which model from your collection best represents you? Well, I ain't got a painted one, but there is an Empire General. He's quite a tubby fellow. It's the tubby thing, he's got a beard and whatever, which clearly I don't at the moment, but it's the lardy thing. The picture of him, there you go, that most represents me. I'll get some paint on him someday, I swear. King Tiger asks, what era of historical wargaming interests you the most and why? I'm interested in a tremendous number of eras. I've read quite a lot about the Dark Ages while I was preparing the Dark Age army, quite a lot about the medieval era in preparation for the Wars of the Roses project I'll be doing before long, quite a lot about Napoleonics because it's the bicentennial of Waterloo, and because Radio 4 serialised an audio drama of War and Peace, and that really got my Napoleonic buttons pressed. So I'm reading about that at the moment, but really the one that interests me the most is World War II. It's just the defining event of the 20th century. It's also the defining event of my childhood, you know, because I spent it sticking airfix figures together, and I wasn't doing that. If the weather was nice, I was running up and down hills making machine gun noises. World War II was, you know, it was a big deal. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting period. The causes having their origin in World War One. I think now being at an age where I'd be eligible for conscription and later in the war and that sort of thing, I'd probably fail the medical and I'd probably follow the grandparents into the Home Guard rather than actually doing active service. But definitely World War II. Great question. And this stuff, hi James, asks, do you make up stories for your models? I do, but not to the extent that some people do. I'm not writing, giving them names and writing tremendous backstories. I make up daft little stories while I'm painting though, you know, things like I painted a squad of World War I figures, decided they were all the fathers of the World War II figures. I did the Plague Zombie for Mike for Pink Eye Productions, and you know, I sort of flashed him up next to a loyalist guardsman, and they're a pair of brothers separated by one's made a terrible life decision, and he's a plague zombie, and the other guy has sort of kept his nose clean. He's still a guardsman. Daft little things, but nothing to the level of that some people do, the impressive level. I do make them up, but crap ones. Good question. XTS Warzone asks, would you ever collaborate with a number of the wargaming community to create your own tabletop wargame? And Mr. Super Chibi asks, have you ever considered making your own set of rules and game? No, the answer is no. I just never really dawned on me. You know, I'm probably primarily a painter anyway, more than a gamer. So, although I do enjoy gaming, I'm getting ahead of myself. That is a question later. To stick to this, no, I've never thought of that. But as a reply to Mr. Super Chippy, we have mini war games. He said he's making his own rules for a medieval / dark age skirmish game, one that's easy for the kids to play. So I'm not up for it, but mini war games is, Well, I say it is. I mean, he's actually made one. He's published it, and that. It's called Madass as well. It looks great. Well worth checking out. But yeah, no, never considered it. The Diomede F-16 says, if money was no object, which armies would you collect en masse? Well, I said before I was I'm taking interest in Napoleonics. Everybody, certainly every gamer with a historical bent that I'm aware of is getting onto the Napoleonics thing. You know, it is a significant year. It's 200 years since Waterloo, and also with this the Radio 4, the War and Peace thing. I'm getting into that. I'd love to do money no object. I'd love to do actually probably the Retreat from Moscow. It's probably more thing the French versus the Russians, because I kind of have a thing for the Russians. Waterloo, Waterloo at a low figures to men ratio, that sort of thing. That'd be very cool as well. But the one I really want to do would be biblical wargaming, or the chariots and that sort of business. I think that. I mean, biblical is only really an era in wargaming. It's not a historical era. It's several historical eras, all thousands of years of history, the very beginning of human history. And biblical wargaming, lots of chariots, lots of Bronze Age technology. I love all that. Love me some biblicals. Pink Eye Productions. Mike asks, how do you keep yourself motivated in the hobby of painting figures? The answer is intermittently. At the moment my motivation is sky high, because I'm firing through these Welsh guys. They're varied enough to keep it interesting. I know that it suffers a bit if I'm doing too much the same, so I try and keep it varied. I've found painting the state troops for the Empire. I've painted 80, I need to paint 100, and there's another block of 50 similar figures as well. And just painting a lot of stuff the same, I really find that a grind. That's why you see little odd figures sort of creep. Yeah, I'll do a batch of Welsh, I'll do another batch of Welsh, I'll do something silly. And it's the variety that keeps me going. But the Welsh, I mean, they're a particularly easy one. They're easy figures to paint, they're varied enough. It's different colours all the time, it's different combinations of colours on each miniature, even though I'm using the same three different colours for a batch of 8. I'm sort of varying it a bit, and you just sort of feel like you're getting through each stage quite quickly. But the big thing, variety, and that will continue. It will be something that I'm supposed to be doing, followed by something daft. Lots of that, lots of variety. Always keep it varied. Great question. British Legion asks, do you think YouTube is part of the hobby, or is it a hobby in its own right? Great question. I'm really and ahhed, gone flip-flopped on this one, all that sort of thing. I think it's a hobby in its own right, but it's definitely, because you don't need to do it. You can paint figures without filming them. You can have a battle without making it into a battle report. You can have an opinion about what Games Workshop are up to without having a talking head about it, all that sort of thing. But we choose to make videos, we choose to watch each other's videos, comment on them, all that sort of thing. It's definitely a hobby in its own right, but for me it's entirely secondary to the painting side. I'm painting what I paint because that's what I want to paint, that's what I want to paint to fight with and so on. I'm not sort of thinking I'll paint this because it'll get me lots of views. I'm not doing opinions about, let's say, about the Warhammer 9th edition. I'm not a news channel or anything like that. I'm just sort of pillar with a paintbrush. So, great question. It's a hobby in its own right, but it's definitely secondary. Jason Pryor asks, if you could time travel, would you go forwards or back? And if backwards, what era? I'd go backwards. I'd go to the Enlightenment. I know bugger all about philosophy and that sort of thing, but I think just the time where ideas were king. When people were really thinking long and hard about the human condition and everything else. And I know it's not perfect time, you know, like the American Enlightenment, well, a lot of the great figures from that were slave owners and so on. You know, there's no historical era is perfect, including the current one. I mean, going forwards would be interesting as well. That would be, you know, see if we do end up, if we do get out of this mess, if we do invent the flying car, just please let there be a flying car in my lifetime. So I've said two answers there. I'll go forwards. Yeah, forwards in time. Great question, Jason. Robert Chisholm asks, do you ever paint any secret details on your models? No, I don't. That's never occurred to me to do that either. I suppose because if I paint something stupid on the model, I'll just have it out there anyway. It'll be out there for everyone to see. You know, if I want to put a load of cabbages in a baggage train, you know, I'll do that. I like the stupid side of the models. I'd like that to be, you know, out there, out front for all to see. Farron Adams asks, what aspect of the hobby do you enjoy the most? I think I'm very much a painter first and a gamer second. I love playing games, especially with my mates, because my mates don't take it too seriously. But in terms of time painting takes more time than playing games anyway. That does for even the most committed gamer, I'm sure. But you know, I don't like painting with unpainted minis. You know, the army needs to be painted for me. So I'm primarily a painter. A guy on the Privateer Press forums, I read a great one a couple of years ago, and he described his hobby as my hobby is buying figures, and everything else, playing games, painting them, all of it's secondary. The hobby is really buying figures. That's sort of true. It's a great way to express it, but painter first, everything else second. Cheers for Mick, Styrene Phoenix asks, from all the figures, units, etc. that you've painted, do you have a favourite and why? Yeah, probably my favourite, although I sort of hated almost every minute of painting them, my favourite is probably the 50 halberdiers that I painted for the Empire Army. I'll put a picture up. There you go. And it's just because it's a big, impressive unit. It's the most impressive unit I've painted for the Empire Army. I just think that's what Warhammer's about, just a great big, whacking great big loads of troops going on. I love all that. Block of 50, I've got a second block of 50 on the way. Whether that ever gets finished, who knows, but yeah, I dig those. Martin McNeil asks, what's the dream mini to paint, cost not being an issue? A couple of choices. One's from Drop Zone Commander, the sort of 30mm Walker. I've got that. I'm waiting for really to get the sort of pluck up the courage to get some paint on it. You know, just to think whether I can do it justice or not. It's the sort of thing. I think once I've done Jer's Prize, the big 54mm Space Marine, I'm going to pick that out as another big model to do. Really looking forward to that. But the real sort of pie in the sky one would be a Titan. I grew up on Epic, I grew up on the other 6mm Titans, and I found out some years ago, you know, I had 20 years off painting figures, and almost 20 years, but I was aware, somebody told me that there was a 28mm Titan, and I went to look today and I thought, oh man, that's nice. So yeah, it'd be one of those Reaver Titan, maybe a couple of war rounds to go with it. I'd love to do that, and I'd love to have the skill to do them justice. Thanks, Mark. Jim White asks, what's the name of the opening sequence song? It is called High Wire from the Bob Leaper Orchestra. It's probably better known as a theme from Danger Man, which was a 60s spy thriller TV show starring Patrick McGowan, later of the Prisoner fame. But it's also known as the theme to Mark Radcliffe's radio programme from the 90s, which I was a big fan of as well. That's probably where I know it better, or how I come to love it so much. But there you go, High Wire, Bob Leaper Orchestra. Mini War Games, congrats on the 100 subs, mate. Yeah, that's thank you very much. It's not a question, but what the hell, you can go in the prize draw. Thank you very much. Last but certainly not least is Dervin. Last minute question, because he forgot. What is your favourite rule set? It's bolt action. Not Dead Zone, Dreadball is the game that I play the most, but and I love that. It's a great rule set. Not perfect, but close to. But bolt action is just superb. It's simple, you know, rifle's a rifle, a squaddie's a squaddie. There's national rules to keep it varied, but it's not sort of over complicated. And the random activation stuff, I think, is fantastic. It's a great fun game to play. You know, it's making World War II fun. Alright, it's not fun, but it's not a simulation. I mean, I think there's things like Chain of Command, which I think are more of an effective military simulation if you're into that sort of thing. I'm more into let's roll some dice and have a laugh, and bolt action, definitely. Thanks everyone, great set of questions. I hope someone's still awake after all of this. I run out of battery. I've never done that. This camera's never run out of battery before, not filming. I took it around bloody South America with me, and I never needed a second battery, so that's a first for this camera. I'll do the draw now. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, I'll paint some up for someone. It's been a long old day, well done to anyone who's still awake. You've listened to all the waffle, or if you've any sense you've skipped all the waffle and just gone straight to this bit. The prize draw. So the first prize is me painting some stuff for you. So I've put in 22 for the 22 people who have commented. The first prize is number 6, Heresy Productions. And I said the first prize, suggesting a second. And the second prize is the same as the first prize. I'll paint you something. Here we go. Number 10, Mr. Super Chippy. So, Heresy Productions, Mr. Super Chippy, I will paint you something of my choosing. So no requests. I'll do a video, but I'll keep it under my hat until you've received it, just to keep the surprise intact. Well done, fellas. Thanks for watching this rather long video. I'll speak to you soon. Ta-ra.
Ha ha ha!